Welcome, guys. I'm Mike Gastin, and I'm joined by Chad Rieflin, the Director of Programs and Grants at the Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Rochester. Chad, thanks for joining me.
Yep, great to be back. Hard to believe this is our final video of the series.
This is our fifth in a multi-part series on credit for entrepreneurs. And I know I've said it in every one, but this has been really illustrative for me. I've learned so much in each one, so this has been great. So we've been kind of building up, I think, to this final question. And we've talked about how your personal credit impacts your business credit and your business finance opportunities. We've talked about different ways that you can access your credit report. We've talked about FICO score, but the big question is, what can I do to make my credit better? How do I make my credit better?
Right.
We
know this was the big question for everyone, so we left it at that.
I feel like we've scaled the mountaintop, and now we're sitting before the great master, so no pressure.
No,
but help us understand what we can do.
Yeah, and once again, this is something that would be personalized for each individual and has a lot of different layers going on, but there's always something that can be done. That's the first piece of good news that I'd like to be able to share. No matter where you're at with your credit, there are steps that you can take. They won't always be easy,
right?
But progress can be made. Even if somebody filed for bankruptcy, there's things that they can do to get back on track within a period of a few years if they're very diligent about what they're doing and thoughtful. So we're going to cover a few of the basics that I think would apply for a lot of folks. And see what else comes up.
Cool. Well, let's do it.
Okay. So the first thing is we want to focus on establishing on-time payment history. So one of the things that gets a lot of people is they'll think, well, there's nothing bad happening on my credit. I don't have any collections. I haven't even used credit, so I should automatically have a perfect credit score. Credit scores don't work that way. It's not like a test score in school where you think, hey, I didn't get anything wrong, so I should have 100%. With a credit score, it's evaluating practices. So it wants to see how well we've done using credit. So one of the first things to make sure is that there is on-time payment history being reported regularly on our credit report. That's what counts the most. Usually it counts for about 35% of any credit score.
You got to pay your bills, people. You got to do it on time.
Right, and specifically loans, things that get reported on our credit report.
I and I've admitted this before, I hate to admit it, but I was a procrastinator when I was younger, and I could have didn't have a lot of money, but let's say I had $300 in the bank, and I had a bill for $36, I would just procrastinate to the last minute. And then, of course, that thing would be 10 days late. And not only did I I get hit with some late fees, but I'm hurting that history. I'm showing that I have a problem. And this is way back. I'm not late on my bills anymore. In fact, I'm the other way now. I love sitting down and paying the bill. It's just a good feeling to get it done.
Feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really important. 35% of your score.
Yeah, it's huge.
Wow.
So that's where we want to start. If we don't have any payment history on our credit reports, we haven't used any loans or haven't had a car loan in a number of years or any credit cards, we really got to work to get something on our credit report. And that can be one of the main challenges. Because it's almost a catch-22 where in order to establish credit and obtain it, you have to have some. So one of the places that a lot of folks start with is a secured credit card. This is a major credit card that can be obtained from a bank or credit union. So it's a Visa or MasterCard that can be used for day-to-day purchases. But it's backed by collateral that would be offered by the consumer.
What would an example of that be? Because I hear a secured credit card collateral. That sound like intimidating terms, but how do I secure a credit card?
So it's pretty simple. We would usually offer up about $300 to the financial institution that we're getting the credit card from. They would put it in a savings account and freeze that. And that would, again, be the collateral for the card. But in every other respect, the card works the same.
So I've got essentially, I'm showing up, I'm giving the bank a chunk of cash, $300, let's say. Then I have a credit card that probably has to have a $300 limit, essentially. And then the bank's not worried about me running off and not paying the bill because they've got the money. And it allows me to start to establish that payment history.
Now, some folks are like, why would I do that when I could just take the money out of my bank account and use my debit card? And the reason behind that is because the secured card is still considered credit. So they're never using that money in that account to pay
Right.
the bill. You still have to pay it. You're still borrowing.
It's just there to
Therefore, it
back
gets
it up.
reported. Just backing it up.
Gotcha. So the first tip is that on-time payment history. You got to show up. You just have to show up. I mean, it's the cost of entry, and it's 35% of your score. That's easy to do, and it's big. The second is if you want to develop that payment history, and you're having trouble getting credit somewhere, is to get one of these secured cards.
Right.
That's fantastic. What else can they do?
Well, that kind of leads us into the second point that I think is very important as well, which is to really focus on the difference between our balances and the limits on any credit cards that we have. So this is where the secured card can become a challenge if you don't manage it the right way. Because it's only a $300 limit,
Sure.
You can get close to that limit pretty quickly. So most credit scoring models will look at the percentage of available credit that you have used.
Okay.
Anytime you exceed 30% of that limit, you begin to lose points on your credit score. So if we've got a credit limit of $1,000 and we spend more than $300, we're going to begin to lose points in that category.
But if I've got that $1,000 limit and I'm keeping just under that $300 mark, that's showing is that helping my score? Is that showing them that I'm responsible?
Right.
Because I've heard of folks that have had like a $1,000 credit card, but they never use it. And then they think, like you said earlier, well, I've got a perfect credit score, but it actually hurt them because they never used it.
Right, you've got to have that activity. That's very important. But the activity doesn't have to be anything too onerous or taking on a lot of debt.
Sure.
In fact, we usually advise folks to maybe use that card once a month for an expense that's already being paid for, like gas.
You're already paying cash. You're just using the card instead.
Right. So you're just managing that transaction differently. So it's not actually adding anything to your budget.
Right.
You won't be paying any additional interest if you pay it in full.
Because you
every
pay it
month.
when the bill comes, the full balance.
Right.
Yeah, that's the trick. I mean, I think if someone struggles with self-discipline, you use that card with the intention of building your credit report, but then you get, enamored with the next shiny thing, and you think, well, I've got this extra cash I was going to spend to pay off the credit card, and so you have to be very disciplined with this approach.
And that's kind of one reason why that credit card use, when it's used responsibly, reflects so well.
Yeah, it's showing
It impacts our credit score so much
Yeah.
because you're doing a lot better than most folks do.
What about things like available credit? So I'm older. I don't know if anybody can tell by looking at me. I know I probably look like I'm in my 20s, but I have access to credit. I have multiple credit cards. I've got a couple that I use pretty regularly. What about like if you've got a bunch of cards with just high balance? Like I've got access to a lot, tens of thousands of dollars. I don't use them all. Should I close down some of those cards, or is it better to have those cards?
That's a great question. There's a lot of folks who ask that question. When it comes to your credit score, there's certain ramifications that you really want to be aware of, especially in relation to what we were just talking about with that ratio. So if we lower the amount of available credit to us, it can increase that percentage of how much we're using of our available credit.
So it's not just how much is the percentage on this card, it's how much is the available credit as a whole to me, Mike, and then how much am I in debt in relationship to that available credit? Do things like a mortgage or a car loan figure into that as well?
They figure in, but differently.
Okay, so that's where we're starting to get into the technical. Yeah, okay, cool.
So you want to be very careful about closing out credit cards and make sure that you only do it if you know that that ratio is not going to be impacted heavily by that.
Sure. And then the last question I have around this, how does cash on hand impact that? Does the bank, when they're looking at credit scores, say, well, he's got 10 grand or 100 grand or 5 grand in the bank? Does that impact my credit score at all?
Cash on hand won't impact your credit score. The only things that will actually constitute your credit score is what's being reported in your credit report. And that's why we talked about credit reports first, because that's the foundation.
Cool. So it's much better to keep your cards clean, pay everything on time, keep your balance ratios correct, than to say, well, I need to be building up these other things. It's not that you shouldn't have cash on hand. That's a whole nother series as to why you should have cash on hand.
For your credit score specifically,
Right.
the activity that's being reported on your credit report is what matters most.
And not to lose sight of this is all on how to build this and make it better, but when you get a higher FICO score, when you get a better credit score, you have access to better deals, better interest rates, better financial instruments that other folks don't necessarily have. So it is worth it. And I can tell you, I'm a living example of a person who is immature and unresponsible, irresponsible, I believe is the technical term. With credit, I just didn't know. I hadn't been educated about it, and I was undisciplined. So I had a really bad credit score when I was young, and I can tell you there have been times where I've been over 800 in the last handful of years. So you can remedy that, and it doesn't take 20 years to do. I mean, it's something that you can do over a short period of time. Chad, this whole series has been fantastic. I feel like in just this short period of time, I've come away having learned a lot, and I hope you folks watching feel the same way. It's amazing to me how important credit is, and I think it's one of those things that we, like I said in an earlier episode, we avoid. Where can people get more information? So for instance, if I want to get help in growing and getting better at the way I handle credit, maybe I'm in some trouble and I need some counseling in that way. I know like your organization helps people, you're based here in the upstate New York area, but I understand you guys are all across the country. There are offices everywhere. How can people avail themselves?
That's a great question. So I think folks first want to seek the help of a nonprofit credit counseling organization.
Which you guys are,
which
correct.
we are.
Yep.
That's certified, and preferably a organization that's associated with the National Foundation for Credit Counseling.
Okay.
You can go to their website at nfcc.org, and they have a locator system where you can find an organization like ours that's in your community.
Sure. So I will include links in the description below, but essentially Chad's organization, there's a local branch here that he and I are meeting at and that he works out of, but they have offices all across the country. And if you want some help, if you want to do better with your credit, you want to get yourself queued up to be successful financially, you could just be an individual with consumer credit issues. You could be an entrepreneur that is trying to get better, look better on paper and have access to better loans. These guys can help you, and they do a great job. They're not for profit, and I'll include the links in the description below. Chad, again, thank you. This has been
Mike.
fantastic.
Really enjoyable.
Yeah, thanks. Guys, if you liked it, again, thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe, and a special thanks to Chad and his organization for helping create this content. Love you all, and we'll see you in the next video.